The noon train came in with a hiss like a tired animal. Wind pushed dust across the platform and pressed it into seams and eyes and the corners of a man's heart. Cole Thatcher stood with his hat pulled low and his hands calloused and quiet at his sides. He had been to this little station 100 times for salt and nails and a new bit for a horse. He had never come to meet a wife. He hadn't meant to send for one. He had written the ad on a winter night when the house felt too big and the wind pressed against the windows like a body trying to come in. A wife to share the work and sit at the table. Kindness and honesty given and expected. Children welcome. He'd signed it with his name and the name of the ranch. Thatcher's draw and sent it to a mail order agency in Chicago, because his neighbor had married that way and seemed happy enough. A woman named Liza Hale had answered. Her letters were neat and plain. She wrote about bread and books and the way she liked to mend things. She did not write much about herself. Cole didn't either. Then spring came, and with the grass came doubt. He wrote a second letter that said, in simple words, I don't know if I can ask you to come. I don't know if I can be good to you the way a woman ought to be treated. It wasn't the letter a brave man writes. It was honest, though. He sent it. Didn't hear back. He was still not sure what he wanted when the train slowed and the crowd shifted, and there she was, mall white-gloved hands gripping a carpetbag. A blue traveling dress pressed flat with cinders and worry, a hat pinned too hard so it wouldn't fly away. Her face was the kind that made a man think about home. She stood still in the dust, as if the world might carry her off if she moved. Liza, Cole asked, but his voice was too rough, and he had to clear it and try again. Miss Hale. She lifted her eyes. They were a green that held gray inside it like the sky holds rain. Yes, she said. That one word sounded like the end of a long run and the start of a longer one. The train shrieked and moved on, pulling its noise with it. Everything else grew quiet. I'm Cole, he said. He took his hat off, wished he had shaved a second. Timmy wished his shirt sleeves didn't show the patch he'd had to put in by hand. He had once been proud of how he stood. These days, he only tried not to lean. It's good to meet you, she said, her fists clenched on the handle of her bag. Her skin was pale, and not with the softness of ladies in towns. This was a kind of pale you got when you were too tired and hadn't eaten enough and had been afraid for a while. You got much more, he asked. She shook her head. Just this. She looked sideways at the station, at the hills, at the stretch of sky. And a future I hope is mine. A wind cut across the platform, colder than a man expected in May. She shivered. Cole took her bag without asking and jerked his chin toward the buckboard. We've got to drive ahead, he said. It's a way yet. There's coffee, if they've got any left. He meant to sound steady. Steadiness was for both of them. She took one step and then another. On the third, she stumbled. He caught her elbow. It was a light touch, but he felt the heat run through his hand like he had grabbed a kettle handle by mistake. Her dress was wet from the hem to mid-calf. On the train, he thought. Then he saw the dark stains higher, not water. Grease, maybe. Or the shadow of some other trouble. You all right? He asked low. Yes, she said too fast. They had coffee at the counter. She drank 3 sips and set the cup down careful, as if it might break. The man behind the counter said the road out past Cotton Ridge was muddy. 3 wagons got themselves stuck to the belly yesterday, he said. Don't make it a 4th. Yes. Sir, Cole said. His father had taught him to call any man sir in the first hour of a danger. It was a way to make room for grace. They set out. The sky was high and white, and the sun lay over the land like a hand. Cole drove steady and let the horses take their pace. The road lifted and fell. He tried not to stare at Liza. She sat straight and did not fidget much. Her hands stayed folded in her lap. Twice she put them on the dash when a rut jarred them. He saw then how she kept looking at the tree line in the horizon, the way a doe looks at a fence measuring, looking for a gap. They forded a shallow creek near dusk. It ran brown from last night's rain, with the rocks slick as lies. The horses picked their way. Water licked at the wheels and at the hem of Liza's dress where it hung over the buckboard step. It had gotten colder, or she had. She pulled. Her coat tighter, When they reached the far bank, a gust hit them. It was the kind that goes through wood and cloth and into bone. Back on the road, she wrapped her arms around herself, and then, in a voice so low he almost missed it, she said, "Help me take this off. Please." He looked at her, surprised, and saw what she meant. It was not a flirt or a trick. It wasn't anything like that. Her dress was soaked through. The wet fabric clung to her and held the cold. The house was still an hour away. The cold could settle in her chest and make a widow out of a woman who hadn't married yet. "There's a line of cottonwoods up ahead and a windbreak," he said. "We'll stop there." Maggie keeps a shawl in the toolbox. Maggie was not. Family, but might as well be. She had washed Cole behind the ears when he was small and told him when he was a fool when he got tall. She kept house sometimes, and the house stayed human because of it. He pulled the team under the trees and set the brake. The wind moved through the leaves like a whisper. He dug in the box for the shawl. It was old wool, but clean and warm. Looked at Liza and saw that she was trembling so hard her teeth had started to click. "Turn your back," she said, trying to laugh and failing. "I'll manage the rest." "A fastener." She swallowed. "It's new. It sticks." He turned. He listened to her struggle with the line of metal teeth that ran up the back of her dress. People in town had called it a wonder hookless, they said. Easy. Better than a row of buttons. He heard the tiny sound of it catching and not going up. "Or down, Cole," she whispered. The word was an apology and a plea, and something else that made his hands remember what gentleness felt like. "Please." He stepped around. He kept his eyes where they needed to be, the little tab, the stuck place, the line of fabric that had to be coaxed. He took the pull between his thumb and forefinger and found where it gummed. "Hold still," he said. "I won't look." She turned her head away and stared into the dark under the trees. He could see the line of her pulse in her throat. He worked the fastener slow and careful, down first, then up, and then down again, easing the teeth apart when they bit. The wool shawl lay over his arm, heavy as a promise. The fastener gave. The dress loosened. The cold air went in. He put the shawl around her shoulders quick. She slid her arms into it and hugged it to herself, relief sharp enough to be a kind of sorrow. The dress fell open a little in the back, and for half a breath, not because he wanted to, but because a man's eyes are sometimes faster than his. Manners, he saw what lay under the cloth. Bruises, old and new, like a map of hard hands. Thin scars that told stories a judge would not let into his court. A small leather packet sewn flat into the lining of her corset where it pressed against the bones. A twist of metal set into the raw edge-seal, not a needle, stamped into it, neat as a threat, banning coal and lumber. He froze. She felt him go still as surely as if the wind had stopped. She turned, shawl tight around her. Her eyes were not green now. They were iron. "Don't," she said. "Please. It's mine." "It's proof," he said. His voice came out low. "Isn't it?" She closed her eyes and nodded once. "Yes." He helped her put the coat back on. He did not ask what she had proof of. He did not say the name he had read. He put his hand flat on the buckboard bench for a breath so he would not reach out and gather her up like a man gathering a foal in a storm. Then he climbed up, flicked the reins, and set the team moving. The wind sang through the cottonwoods, as if it were saying a word over and over. He did not know which word. He only knew the sound of a door he had shut a long time ago pushing itself open. Part 2. The house that held its breath Thatcher's draw was a wide place under a ridge of red stone. The house sat where the hill gave up being stubborn and let a meadow in. A porch wrapped around the front, and a boot scraper stood by the door. Smoke climbed from the chimney in a straight thread. Maggie had left a lamp in the window, as she always did. It was a simple way to say, "You are wanted here," without making any man feel weak. "Welcome," Cole said. The word came out rough. He cleared his throat. "It isn't much, but the roof holds the weather out, mostly." "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. We could tell by the way her shoulders loosened. Maggie swung the door open before. They reached it. She was hair and hands and eyes that saw everything and judged little. You must be Miss Hale, she said, wiping her hands on her apron and already pulling the visitor into warmth without asking permission. I'm Maggie. You don't need to know my last name. I'm Maggie to everyone, even the hens when they get above themselves. Liza smiled then. It made something shift inside Cole. He had not known how much he needed to see that. Come in. There's stew, Maggie said. Dry stockings. Mr. Thatcher, don't stand there like a post. Take her bag. Lord love a duck. Your coat is wet. Hang it by the stove. Miss Hale, I have a room ready for you. It's not big, but it's tucked up near the chimney so it stays warm. Cole, stop looking like the sky is going to fall. It's only supper. At the table, Liza ate like a woman who had been taught to count her bites. She said please and thank you and asked Maggie about the chickens, as if her life depended on knowing their names. Maggie talked as she moved, filling plates and filling the air with the hum that makes a house a house. After, Cole stood on the porch and watched the sky turn the color of blood and peach, color that made him think of sunsets and cuts and healing both. He heard Maggie and Liza in the kitchen, washing and drying. He heard Liza laugh, small, like the first time a creek breaks its ice in the spring. He had not told her yet that his second letter might have crossed her first on some train track in the middle of nowhere. He had not asked her about the bruises, the packet, the name stamped into metal. He knew a little about that name. Everybody in 3 counties did. Silas Banning owned half the timber on the north side of the range and bought folks who worked the other half. He was a man who liked his hands clean and his work done by men whose hands weren't. Cole's jaw tightened. He had seen men like that in other places. On the border, south, in the year when he had decided a badge wasn't for him after all. Laws are good when they help old women crossing ice. They're poor when they help men with money step on throats. Maggie came and stood beside him with a dish towel. She did not look at him. She looked at the sky. She's hurt, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, he said. Hurts in the past are like burrs under a blanket, Maggie said. They work out into the day if someone's not careful. You going to be careful? He put his hand on the porch rail. It was smooth, where his father had run his hand. I don't know what I'm going to be, he said. I only know what I am. I'm tired of talking to the sky and hearing it say nothing back, Maggie grunted. The sky is full up with listening, she said. It doesn't always talk. We do enough of that for both. Looked at her. Banning, he said. Okay, she's tied up in something with him? Who isn't? Maggie said, dry. You mind the fastener? He startled. You saw that? I see everything, she said. And I don't tell unless there's a reason. You're a good man, Cole. You do foolish things sometimes because you're stubborn, but you don't do cruel ones. Don't start. If she trusts you enough to ask for help with a seam that sticks, she's trusting you with more than that seam. Don't break it. Liza came to the doorway then with a cup in her hands. Steam curled up. Tea? She asked. Maggie says it's good for a day of trains. She did not have her coat now. She had put on one of Maggie's shawls proper over a dry dress. Her hair was down and drying by the stove. She looked young and old at the same time. Thank you, Cole said. He took the cup. His fingers brushed hers. It was like touching something you thought would burn and finding that it made you warm. Tomorrow, she said, and he understood. She was saying more than a day. Tomorrow, he agreed. Part 3. Names and Night Cole changed the bedding in the spare room that night and stood for a long time in the doorway. He used to sleep against this wall when his father took sick, so he could get up quick and get water. He had put a shelf there for books and a hook for a shawl for his ma a long time ago. The shawl was gone. The hook remained. He went to his room and sat on the edge of his bed and took out a little box from under it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, soft with handling. He didn't mean to read it now. He had read it so many times he could see the words in the dark. June had written it. June had laughed and put her hand on his chest and said she would be his wife. When he came back from his foolish time with a badge in a town that wanted men like him because the world was hard, he had come back. June had been gone, a fever taking her in 3 days. That was 4 years ago. His life had turned quiet since. He put the letter back. He lay down, slept as a man sleeps when he has been running inside his skin for months. In the morning, Liza was up before the sun. She had a dish towel tied around her waist, and a look on her face that said she knew where spoons lived, because she had watched Maggie the night before and would not have to be told twice. Maggie stood with her and talked like they had known each other for years. "Biscuits," Maggie said. "We'll make a proper mess. It's the only way to get them right." "Cole, don't make that face. You like biscuits." "I do," he said, but he smiled. He took the bucket and went for milk. The cow looked at him with the one eye that said, "I will not be moved unless I feel like it." Talk to her about patience. When he came back, Liza was cutting biscuits with a cup and laying them on a tin like children in a row. After breakfast, he took her out to see the place. He showed her the lower pasture and the line of cottonwoods. Along the creek and the ridge where he had found a bear once and left him alone, both of them pretending they had not seen each other, he kept the talk easy. He did not go near the hill. That held a small mountain of stones where his father lay. There would be time for that if she stayed. He did not know if she would. On the way back, they walked along the fence line. The wire caught the light. Liza stopped and put her hand lightly on one of the posts. "I didn't grow up with this kind of open," she said. "I grew up with alleys and people and the smell of bread from a shop. This is like waking in a body that breathes longer." He looked at her. "What made you answer my letter?" "A door that needed opening," she said. She looked up at him, and a truth I needed to learn, that I can choose a life. "You can," he said. "And you?" she asked. "What made you write it?" "A quiet house," he said. "And a porch with 2 chairs that didn't have anyone to sit in. The other one." He cleared his throat. "I wrote again," he added, the truth sticking a little before it came. "Last month, said I couldn't promise I was enough of a man to do right by a wife. It wasn't a brave letter." She looked at him a long time. Then she took in a breath. "I didn't get it," she said. "Or if it came after I had already left. I am glad I didn't read it. If I had, maybe I would have stayed on the train anyhow, but I would have sat with doubt in my lap like a baby and fed it. I've done enough of that." He almost reached for her hand. He didn't. They walked on. The sky was clean and wide. The wind had a taste like rain. Back at the house, a rider kicked up dust on the road. Cole went still. He set Liza behind him with a hand that did not look like a shield, but was. Maggie came to the doorway and wiped her hands on her apron and watched the man come. He was dressed too nice for a ranch road. His boots shone. His mustache was neat as a ledger line. He didn't look at the land. He looked at the house as if he could measure what it would sell for without going inside. His hat was not a hat you wore to keep weather off. It was a hat you wore to look like the kind of man whose weather happened to other men. "Morning," Cole said. "Mr. Thatcher," the writer said, as if they were already in a room with a judge. "Harlan Voss. I represent banning interests." He took a card from his pocket and offered it, as if a card were a way to make a soul quiet. Cole did not take it. "Last I checked, the hills were still free," Cole said. His voice stayed even. "If you have business with me, say it. If you have business with my cows, take it up with the bull. He's in a better mood than I am." Harlan Voss smiled without moving his eyes. "It's a simple matter," he said. "We have reason to believe a woman known to us as Miss Clara Banning Ward to Judge Silas Banning has fled her guardian's house under distress. She took certain papers that do not belong to her. We tracked her ticket to this station. Agent recalls a woman of her description meeting a man like yourself and leaving. I have a letter here with a description and the judge's signature. The law is on my side. If you have the woman, you must produce her." Liza took a small breath. Behind Cole's shoulder, Maggie's head tilted like a hawk's. "You say Ward?" Cole said. He kept his lids lowered. "What you mean?" "I mean a child of a man who owed the judge a favor," Voss said, taken in. "Treated well, taught polite things. Now ungrateful." Jaw went tight enough to ache. He did not turn. Saw it in the corner of his mind where the eye goes when you don't dare look, the small leather packet sewn into a corset seam. He saw the bruises, old and fresh. "You have a warrant?" he asked. "We have the judge's letter," Voss said, as if that were more important, and his authority. It is more than enough. In Cheyenne, maybe, Cole said, not here. Wass's smile changed color, like something left in the sun too long. You will regret helping criminals, he said with a pleasant tone. People remember. I do, Cole said softly. He had a hand near his belt, near the place where the weight of a gun felt like habit. He didn't move to it. Take your regret and the dust you brought and go back to town. Come with the sheriff if you want to try the law way. You're making a mistake, Voss said. He watched Cole like a man choosing where to cut a steak. Cole stood like a fence post, driven deep. I don't make new friends easy, he said. I pick my mistakes slow. Voss's horse stamped. The air had a bite. Voss flicked his reins without looking, turned, and rode. He did not hurry. Men like him think the world will wait while they go and get what they think they own. Cole shut the door and turned. Liza stood with her back to the wall, her hands wrapped up in each other, knuckles white. Clara, he said, tasting the other name on his tongue. I haven't been Clara for a long time, she whispered. He said he would adopt me. Then he said I would marry him. Said it was the only way to keep me safe. Her throat worked. I ran. Good, Maggie said briskly. She set a cup on the table with a solid sound. Drink, then tell us what you have sewn into your dress. It's clever. I like clever, but it's dangerous, and we need to be ready. Liza looked at Cole. I didn't mean to bring trouble. To your door? He thought of his quiet house, and his quiet grief, and his quiet porch. He thought of the wind tying itself in the cottonwoods like a ribbon. He thought of a man like Voss saying the word ward as if it were a leash. You brought yourself to my door, he said. That's the first good thing that's happened. In a while, the rest is only what it costs to do what's right. Part 4. The packet. They sat at the table with the curtains drawn and the light low. Liza held the shawl around her and unpinned the back of her dress. Her hand shook. Maggie stood behind her like a tree. Cole stood a little off to the side, with his eyes on the packet so he would not accidentally see more of her than he should. He knew where to look and where not to. That also counts for being a good man. Liza took a tiny pair of scissors Maggie fetched and cut the stitches in the lining. The leather packet came free. It was thin and dark with the oil from her skin and the heat of her breaths. She put it on the table. You don't have to know everything, she said. But if you are to be part of this, you should know enough to choose. Cole nodded. He did not sit. He put his hands on the back of a chair and waited. She opened the packet. Inside were pages and pages of small, neat writing in a hand Cole had seen in notices and on tall papers in town Silas. Banning's hand, ledgers, numbers, names, then other papers. Letters between the judge and men whose names were not on signs, but were on the insides of envelopes men were careful with. Contracts with men like Voss. Agreed payments to keep things quiet after a mine collapsed because the supports were thin and cheap. A list of bribes to a marshal who had since moved to a town with better whiskey and worse news. A note to a woman, with no last name, who had a child who needed a doctor. Good God, Maggie breathed. Liza put another paper on top. It was smaller. It had a seal, banning coal and lumber. It was not a business letter. It was a marriage certificate, half-filled, with Clara Banning's name and a line for Silas's and a date 2 weeks from the day she boarded the train. He said this was law, Liza whispered, shame and anger wrestling in her voice. He said he could make it happen whether I signed it or not. He said no one would believe me if I told. So I took what would make people listen. I took his words about other sins because no one wants to hear about the kind that hurt inside a house. Cole's hand tightened on the chair. His jaw hurt. He made his voice easy because she needed easy. You were right, he said. This makes men in suits stand up and listen when they won't. For a girl with a blue dress and tired eyes. I didn't know where else to go, she said. So I wrote to you. Because your letter was plain and didn't make promises it didn't need to. You sat at table with bread. You didn't say anything about saving me. I could stand that. I couldn't stand being told pretty lies. You wanted to say I would save you if you asked. You wanted to say I would give my blood to make you safe. Said we will take this to someone who can put numbers in front of a judge. not banning. A real one. We will send word to the Marshal in Laramie. He isn't on this list. We will send copies so that if they burn one, the others wake up and talk. Maggie nodded, already moving. She had paper and ink before the decision was fully out. I'll boil the kettle, she said. We'll press 2 copies now. Cole fetched the Bible, not to pray with, to hide the second set in.
Thanks.
Big enough to look holy and common enough to get ignored by the kind of man who thinks he already owns God. Liza made a sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been broken. Thank you, she said. If the judge comes, he won't come himself, Cole said. Men like him don't get blood on their cuffs, but Voss will. Maybe with 3 men. Maybe with more. We'll be ready. He went to the small room off the front hall where his father had kept books about weather and cattle and a Bible with a cover soft from years of hands. He set it on the table. Maggie started making copies, small and neat. Liza dipped the pen and began to. Her hand was steady now that she had something to do that would make the danger into a plan. Cole, she asked after a while, not looking up. Yes. Do you wish I had gotten your second letter? That I had decided not to come? Breathed out slow. Truth had kept him alive more than once. No, he said. I wish nothing different. Even with this. Even if it brings the ridge down on our heads, he said. Maggie snorted. You too can practice your vows later, she said. Just keep the ink from blotting. She dipped her pen again. And if this brings the ridge down, we will set a table under the open sky and eat there, and it will be ours. Part 5. The night before, they sent 1 copy with a boy who was fast and quiet and owed Maggie for a broken window from years before. He took the packet like it was a loaf of bread and ran with it, splitting across the lower pasture until he was small. Against the fence, Cole saddled a bay mare and rode to the east to see what wind came on that side. He saw 2 men near the ridge, kept to shadow. He watched them go. He came back with the knowledge that Voss would not wait long. In the evening, the sky lay down. Flat on the land, the wind kept its breath. Maggie set bread on the table and soup that tasted like thyme and carrots and beef. Liza ate with care, but she ate more than the night before. She laughed twice, small sparks. When she reached for her cup, her sleeve fell back, and he saw the thin bones of her wrist and the faint marks there that said someone with rings had. Gripped too hard after supper, Maggie went to feed the hens and give the horse in the shed a second bucket because she had told him she would. Cole and Liza stood on the porch. The quiet was a kind that had weight and kindness both. When you called me Liza at the station, Riche said, I wanted to correct you, to tell you it wasn't my name. But it is. It is the name I made for myself when I sent that first letter. I will keep it. It suits you, he said. A new name is a good coat. She looked at his hands. They were nicked and scarred the way a man's hands get when he has to cut wire and pull calves and fight a fire with a shovel. I don't know how to be a wife, she said. Not the way people mean. Yeah, I don't know how to be a husband. He said, the way people mean, but I know how to be a partner. I know how to get up in the night when a cow is calving and not make a mess of it. I know how to eat what is put in front of me and say thank you and mean it. I know how to be quiet. When someone needs quiet and listen, when a story needs telling, the other things we can learn. She closed her eyes and then opened them. He will come tomorrow, she said. I know. And you will stand between me and him. I will stand, he said. But not because I think you can't stand. I will stand because we stand better together. I was afraid you'd. Say it because you think you own me, she said. He looked surprised and then angry at the world, not at her. No, he said. I don't own anything that breathes. The land keeps me on it until it doesn't. Even the house will go back to the ground when it is ready. You are only yourself. She put her hand in his then, light, as if testing something new. He turned his palm and held her fingers in a way that held them and let them go both. They stood like that for a long time. Maggie came back and found them. She smiled in a way that said part of her would sing and part would only nod and get on with it. Get some sleep, she said. I'll sit the first watch. They took watches like soldiers. It was a less dramatic thing than people. Tellin' stories. It was a kettle, filled and emptied, a lamp trimmed, a chair near a window. It was looking out at dark and letting the house's breath and your own make a pattern. If something breaks it, in the deep of night. Cole dozed in the chair and woke to find Liza on the floor near his feet, her head against the wall, her shawl fallen. He slid it up over her shoulders without a word. She did not wake. He watched her sleep and felt something in his chest lift and settle, like a foal getting its legs under it for the first time. Part 6. A door and a gun. They came at noon. Because men who like theater do not come early, and men who like winning do not come late. Harlan Voss brought 6 men, not 3. He had a paper in his hand, and a gun on his hip, and a smile that said he had already decided how this would go. Cole stepped down into the yard and put his hat back a little so he could see without a brim in his way. He didn't have his gun on his hip. He had it in his hand, low at his side, the barrel pointed at dirt. Aggie stood in the doorway with a rolling pin she could throw like a stone. Liza stood behind the curtain where she could see without being seen. Cole felt her there like a second heartbeat. "Mr. Thatcher," Voss called. "Pleasant. We meet again. From town, he has papers. You will not want to be on the wrong side of them." The deputy was a young man with a chest he was trying to keep big. He did not look happy. He held the paper like it had thorns. "Mr. Thatcher," he said, "I have to serve this. I don't like it, but let me see it," Cole said.
8.
He stepped to the edge of the porch. He kept his gun pointed down. The deputy handed him the paper. Cole read it slow. It was a writ saying that Clara Banning was to be returned to her guardian's custody and that anyone harboring her would be charged. It had a judge's seal. It did not have the judge's signature. Cole raised an eyebrow. "This is a clever stamp," he said. "Where's the ink from? Town? Or did you bring it yourself, Mr. Voss?" Voss's mouth thinned. "Don't play lawyer with me," he said. "You aren't one." "No," Cole said. "I'm a cattleman. But I can count and I can read. And if you had a real thing, you would have brought a real judge, not a boy who wishes he were somewhere else." The deputy flinched. Voss made a slight motion. 2 men stepped onto the porch, guns loose in their hands. Liza pulled the curtain back and stepped out. She held the Bible, the heavy one, in both arms. Her face was pale and sharp. "Stop," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't small. Voss smiled like a cat hearing a mouse try to sing. "There you are," he said. "Clara, my name is Liza Hale," she said. She looked at the deputy, not at Voss. "Listen, if you take me, you are helping a man who bought a marshal, who paid to keep miners underground when they could have lived, who signed a paper that says he will marry a woman who doesn't want him. If you take me, you are saying that paper means more than what is right. If you say no, you will keep breathing the air of a man who can look at himself in a mirror and not spit." The boy swallowed. He looked at Voss. He looked at Cole. He looked at his own hands. He took a small step back. "Mr. Voss," said weak. Voss's smile did not change. "This is not a town matter anymore," he said. "This is mine." He drew his pistol and pointed it at Cole's chest. It was a shot a man could make with his eyes closed at this range. "Step aside," he said, "or I will put 2 holes in you and be sad about it later. Shoot me and you get nothing." Cole said, "Shoot her and you get less." His voice was slow. He could feel his heartbeat down in his boots. Voss shifted his aim toward Liza. He should not have. Men who hurt women always make the same mistake. They think hurting will bend a woman. They forget what women look like when they have decided. Liza did not flinch. She lifted the Bible. It fell open in her hands. She took out the copy of Voss's name on the list, the marshal's bribe, and the letter with Silas's half-wife plan. "You can shoot me and you can call me names," she said. "But if I fall, these will fly. A boy on a horse will get to Laramie before you can stop him. A woman in town who can read better than your lawyer will make 3 more copies and put them in every postbox on the line." Voss's face changed. It did not go red. It went flat. Men like him do not show anger. They show calculation. He looked at Cole and aimed for the space under his collarbone. "Don't," Liza whispered. It wasn't fear. It was a command. She stepped down 1 step. She put herself between the gun and Cole. "Maggie," Cole said, without moving his mouth. "I'm here," Maggie said. Her hand went behind the door. She had a shotgun there. She swung it slow and true and set the barrel down on the top of the chair, steady as a table. "Harlan Voss," she said in a voice like an old hymn. "This house is under my protection and God's, though I think he's busy right now, so it's mostly mine. You move your hand and I will shoot your knee. Then we'll see how pretty you look at the judge with your leg in a sling." Voss laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "You think the law will be on your side?" I asked. "You think the world cares about your little show?" "I think the world is tired," Maggie said, "and the tired break different." A dove landed on the porch rail, which is a foolish thing to notice when a gun is pointed at your heart. But sometimes the world is rude that way. It set its head under its wing like it was washing. Voss moved. He shifted his weight and turned his wrist the way men do when they want to shoot fast. Cole moved at the same time, not to draw on fire, but to push Liza to the side hard enough to put her behind the thick post that held up the porch. He did not look at the bullet. He looked at her and made sure she went where he wanted her. The shot went off. It lifted dust from the porch boards near his boot. Maggie fired without waiting to see if she should be sorry. Voss screamed. Sound. Bit. His leg went from under him. He fell, gun spinning. The men with him pulled and shot wild. Cole's gun was in his hand without him remembering drawing it. He fired twice into the dirt near their feet. The earth jumped. The men jumped too. "Enough," said a voice from the gate. It was low and carried. It was the voice of a man used to being heard. A tall man on a gray horse rode in, the marshal's star on his vest, dull with dust. 2 men rode with him when the boy Cole had sent the previous night. Flushed and proud, the other the man from the telegraph office, who had more nerve than his skinny arms suggested. Behind them 3 more men, the kind who work long and sleep. "Rough and know the smell of a lie, Mr. Voss," the marshal said. "I have a paper of my own. Real ink, real signature. A warrant for Silas Banning on charges of bribery and conspiracy. And for you, for carrying out the work of a crime? Put your gun down. My patience is short." Voss's eyes were full of a kind of hate that looks like fear when you scrape it thin. He didn't reach for the gun. He reached for his pride. "Wasn't there?" The marshal swung down easy and took the pistol out of reach. He nodded to Cole. "You picked a good friend to send," he said. "We were ready to hear." Voss spat in the dirt. "This isn't over," he said to Liza. "It is," she said. "For me it is." A marshal's men gathered Voss and the ones who had come with him and put iron on their wrists. The deputy boy took a step forward and took his hat off. He said to Liza, face red, "I'm sorry, I should have not come." "You came to make it right," she said. "That counts." He looked like he might cry. Put his hat back on and stood straighter. The yard breathed. The house breathed. Cole realized he had been holding his own breath for a while. He looked at Liza. She stood straight, the Bible in her hands, ink on her fingers. He had a sudden wild desire to kiss the ink. He did not. Part 7. Letters that arrive when they should. Marshall stayed long enough to sit a minute and drink water and make a note in a book. "The judge will face a different kind of day than he's used to," he said, tucking the Laramie copy into his inside pocket as if that would keep it safe. "We'll need you to come when the court asks. Tell your part." Liza lifted her chin. "I will," she said. Her hand shook after he left, small and fast. Maggie put a plate of bread in front of her. "Eat," she said. "You'll feel human sooner." A week later, a letter came addressed in a hand Cole knew from notices, and from a day he had worn a badge. It was the marshal's. He wrote, simple as a man dressed plain. "Silas Banning is in custody." The papers went to 2 judges for good measure. Voss sang a piece to lighten his own load. The deputy gave a statement that will help. "We will expect Miss Hale in Laramie for the hearing in 2 months. If she needs a place to stay, my sister keeps a boarding house that doesn't ask questions. It doesn't have to." Cole read the letter out loud on the porch. The sun was belly high for the day and the chickens were making tidy sounds. Liza sat with a sewing basket. She had mended the sleeve of his work shirt without being asked and made the stitches. So small you had to look twice to see them. "I'll go," she said. I will stand in a court and put my name on this and make it burn. Then I will be done. Then we will be done, he said, and didn't care that he had said we. He had not asked her to marry him. He did not know how to. It was a simple thing to do and a big thing to do. He wanted to ask under the sky. He wanted to ask with his hand on the porch rail where his father had kept his hand. He wanted to ask after the sound of hammers fixing. Something, and with the smell of bread in the air. The moment kept not coming. It came in a way he did not expect. On a Saturday, the town put up bunting, and the girls from the school took wildflowers to the church, and a couple named Ida and Booths were going to be married under the cottonwood with the split trunk that looked like a woman with her hands in her apron pockets. Maggie made 2 pies. Cole and Liza went because it is good to stand inside other people's joy when you are trying to learn your own. They sat in the back. The preacher spoke words that were plain and decent. He did not talk about obedience much. He talked about weather and wood and the way people bend. He said, put your hands together and make a roof. Cole's hands moved on their own, and his found Liza's. She looked at him, then at the sky, then back. He opened his mouth to ask. There, under the tree, with Ida's ribbon blowing, he didn't get the words out before a rider galloped into the crowd hard, breaking chairs and scents. The man was wild-eyed. He was not one of Voss's. He was a kid from the edge of town where the fields turned to gravel. Fire, he yelled. Thatcher's draw. Lightning hit the dry grass. The shed took. The wind cold did not hear. The rest, he was on his feet. He was on his horse. Liza was on the buckboard next to him before he could say, don't. Maggie climbed in the back with 2 wet sacks and a look that had made men twice her size get out of the way for years. They rode into smoke that moved like a living thing. Fire is a kind of animal. It wants to eat and doesn't care what. It took the dry grass and went for the fence. It licked the boards, and they went up. The shed was half ember, half flame. Cole jumped down. He ran for the pump house with a bucket. Liza took the other. He fell into a dance people fall into when the earth tries to die. Water flew. Steam rose. Maggie beat at small fires with the sacks and swore in a steady stream that sounded like a hymn if you didn't listen too close. Neighbors came, as they do, without asking for anything. The marshal showed up with a sack of sand that he threw. At the edge, where the fire was trying to sneak, in the worst of it, when the wind threw a tongue of flame toward the house and the porch he loved. Eliza picked up the Bible without thinking and set it by the pump. Then she took the shawl over her own head and ran at the flame, beating and stamping and throwing dirt. It was not pretty. It was not the way a lady moves. It was the way a person stands between a thing and a thing they love. The fire let go. It lay down in the black and hissed and went dead by inches. The shed was gone. The house had one black scar along the side. The fence would need new boards. The cottonwoods looked tired. The sky went blue again, rude as always. Cole stood in the yard with ash on his hands and water on his shirt and looked at Liza. She had soot on her face like paint. Her hair had come down and lay in a rope over one shoulder. He had never seen anything so alive. "Marry me," he said. He didn't ask in a speech. Said it like a man digging in earth and finding water. "Marry me, Liza." I don't know. The right words. Only know my hands know how to put your plate on the table and fix fence and make a roof over us. I want to learn the rest with you. She laughed and cried at the same time. You do know the right words, she said. There. Simple. She put her ash hand in his and left a print. Yes. Maggie raised her wet sack like a flag. About time, she said. The marshal smiled and took off his hat and said he was a witness if they needed one. The kid from the wedding who had brought the news blushed hard. Can I tell people? He asked. It's a good thing to carry, Yukon Cole said. He looked at Liza again, as if to be sure she hadn't changed her mind in the breath. She had not. Part 8. Confessions and a doorway. They married on a Tuesday under the cottonwood with the apron pocket trunk. The preacher came in his work coat and used a book that didn't have gold on it because he'd left his good one on his desk. The town gathered in that way towns do, with a loaf of bread and a jar of pickles and a plate of something that might be a pie. The marshal wore his star and shook Cole's hand with both of his. The deputy stood in the back and did not cry. Almost the only thing that did not go to plan was this. As they stood and spoke the words and put their hands together like a roof, a rider came fast down the road and swung off and ran. He had a letter in his hand, long and thin, with a seal. He held it out to Liza, breathless. "From Cheyenne," he said. "From the court." Cole watched her face as she broke the wax. He remembered the letter he had sent, and the letter she had not gotten. He thought of all the ways paper can change a life, she read. Her eyes went hot. She handed the letter to Cole. He read, "And the world changed a little and then settled better. Silas Banning had died in his cell the night before," the letter said. Netta said he had not been old, but men like him get brittle with rage. His heart had broken. Itself, he had signed a statement before he did, giving up his claim to her. He had added a line in a hand that had to be his. "I release her." It was the only decent sentence in a long life. It had come too late, and just in time. Liza exhaled like something leaving her ribs. She did not cry for him. She cried for the girl. Who had thought a door could never open? She put her forehead against Cole's chest for one small second. He put his hand on the back of her head and felt the notch there, where some child had fallen once and hit a table corner and learned about pain. He thought, "I will make the world be softer to this head when I can. Do you want to wait?" the preacher asked soft. "No," she said. "I want to finish this." They did. They finished and began at the same time, like you do when you cross a line and don't know until your foot is already on the other side. Part 9. Under the endless western sky, their life did not turn into a painting. It turned into a table with 3 chairs because Maggie wouldn't leave, and why should she? A porch where boots lined up in a row, and sometimes there was mud on the floor and sometimes not. A yard where a hen hopped up on the rail and scolded anybody who walked by. A bed where 2 people learned the shape of each other's breathing and let that be holy. Liza went to Laramie, put her hand on a Bible and told the truth about a judge and about a house and a girl who had thought she was property and then thought she was free and then learned that freedom is not a day. It is a way of getting up. Cole sat in the room and listened and didn't speak and let her say it without trying to fix it. When it was over, they ate stew in bowls in a kitchen where the marshal's sister had knitted potholders with bright yarn. They went home and slept without waking at every creak, because the creaks had learned to mean nothing more than they did. The boy who had carried the letter became a man who fixed fences well, and sometimes ruined cakes on purpose because he liked the batter better. The deputy wore his badge straighter. Voss went to prison and wrote letters that no one answered. Sometimes Liza would say, "Help me take this off," with a smile and an eye that said she trusted him with more than metal. He took his time and made his hands careful. Sometimes he would say, "Help me take this off," and mean the armor a man wears when he is trying to be a roof all the time. She set her hands on his chest and undid quiet. On a spring day a year later, a foal was born in a field behind the shed they had rebuilt together. It stumbled up on legs too long and found its mother and found milk, and the world was new again. Liza stood and cried without being asked why. Cole put his arm around her and looked at the sky, which was the kind of blue that makes people forgive it for being far. "We'll call him Proof," Liza said. Cole agreed. It fit. They planted a tree near the corner of the porch. "For the day we burned and didn't break," Maggie said. She hung a ribbon on it every spring that matched the wildflowers the girls took to the church. She told anybody who'd listen that biscuits must be learned, but gravy was a gift. She was right. When storms came, they shut the windows and laid a rug in front of the fire and told stories. Cole told about June once, and Liza listened without flinching and took his hand and thanked June out loud for loving the man she loved now. Liza told about the first night she ran and the way a train car smells when you are in it alone, and the way a woman looks at other women and sees her own fear reflected and tries to make hers smaller so the other ones will be, too. They forgave small things. They forgave larger ones slower. When the forgiveness was not ready, they held the space the way you hold a bucket under a pump that's frozen until the water starts. They made a life that looked simple and was It was also a thing you could call holy if you liked that word, or good if you didn't. They lay sometimes on a blanket out on the back field and watched the sky. It went on. It was endless and sometimes careless. It did not answer questions. It covered them like a roof they could not see the edges of. They did not need more than that most days. When people in town told the story later, they liked to tell about the day the bride asked the rancher to help with a fastener, and he unzipped it and froze because he saw more than skin. He saw a broken world and a brave choice. They told about the yard with the guns and the Bible and the voice that said enough. They told about the judge who died and about the wedding with a letter in the preacher's hand. Some of them embellished. Some of them made it smaller because they liked things tidy. But if you stood under the cottonwood with the apron pocket trunk and the ribbon on it, and the wind in it, and asked the tree to tell you the truth, it would say this: a man with rough hands and a quiet house wrote a plain letter. A woman with bruises and a new name wrote back. The world tried to scare them and couldn't. They took the fastener that stuck and made it smooth. They built a life that was not a story anybody would buy in a fine city. Was better. It was a table and bread and a sky that did not have to be kind to be beautiful. And a second chance both took because they were finally brave enough to want it. And under that endless western sky, when the light went gold and the day settled, like a tired horse, they would sometimes sit on the steps with their shoulders touching and say nothing at all. That kind of quiet is not empty. It is full of everything you chose and everything you let go. It is redemption, heavy and light as will across your back, warm the way a shawl is on a cold road when someone you trust pulls the fastener and it comes free.